All right, let's get going. So, hi everybody, welcome. This is part 2 of yesterday's class, which was Breaking the Story. And this is a free public class on Scriptcamp that is intended to tell you show you some of the basics of how do we come up with working movie premises, and then how do we extrapolate from those premises to find what the major plot beats of the movie are going to be. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So we're going to, again, do some exercises and activities where we're going to just be coming up with, like, movie premises on the spot. And part of the fun of that is always going to be not thinking too hard. So don't try to plan too much or think too hard when we're just doing an exercise where you just come up with something. Part of the fun is coming up with something silly and then making it work, and thus sort of building those muscles to improve your story creating skills. I think that the sound is not coming through my headphones for some reason, so I'm just going to double check why that might be. But let's get ready to get started. We'll start with just a quick recap of what we did yesterday. We're not going to go through all the same stuff from yesterday. Okay, we're not going to... it's not even detecting my Bluetooth for some reason. Why would that be? It says it's discoverable. I might have to switch headphones in a moment. While I'm trying to fix this, I'm going to try to fix this and talk at the same time and review just the key points from yesterday. First of all, if you're brand new here, thank you for joining, but do keep your microphones muted. You can do that with the gray microphone icon in the bottom left corner of the screen. That it will either mute or unmute you, and sometimes I'll call on people in order to have them answer questions or participate in activities. But for the most part, we'll be using, for these big public classes, the text chat. You can find that on the left-hand side of your Discord window also, under the heading that says General Chat. That's where we're talking right now. So feel free to post any questions or comments in that chat as we go, and I'll be checking back intermittently to look at that, and I can also just bring it up like this so we can see what people are posting in the class. So yeah, keep those mics muted for most of the time. We don't want to hear the dogs barking and babies crying and stuff. Really basic. If you're new to Scriptcamp, we're a Discord community that is intended to be like the gym that you go to get better at writing. We have free classes and programs all the time, and workshops and script swaps and table reads and many just resources to help you improve at screenwriting and writing scripts for movies and TV. And very soon we're adding new formats such as a short film bootcamp that is coming up after this that you can actually RSVP for as of today. So write a short film script in 4 different class sessions, 1 to 10 pages long. And we also are working on, we're moving into more novel writing stuff after that. So we're going to start adding much more manuscript prose writing and commercial fiction focused boot camps and classes after the shorts is done. So Scriptcamp is always changing and expanding. We have many different things here that you can do and a couple different membership options. So you can sign up for just basic if you want just the weekday classes. That's just twice a week on Wednesday, Thursday like this. So a lot of these are going to be open to the public, but some are just for paid students as well. So you get access to these exclusive classes, private Discord channels, a video library and recordings of all of our classes. And that's all for just $5 a month. You can also sign up for Unlimited, which gets you access to everything we do here, and it comes with a 2-week free trial, so you can try out everything for 2 weeks and cancel before then and not pay anything. So you can see what all the different tiers offer you here. Coaching includes a monthly script review, so I'll be actually giving you notes on a script once per month. I'm not going to go over the basics of the boot camps and who I am anymore, because we did all that last time. I just want to point this one out to you. The upcoming short script bootcamp, you can RSVP for that now. I just want to leave a link for you to click on if you're interested in writing a short film. That first class session will again be free, so you don't need to sign up for this way in advance. But just mark your spot, because we might run out of slots. We might fill up. You never know with these things. So let me give you a link for that, and you can RSVP for that here. You don't have to pay money to RSVP. That's just to give you the notification when it's starting up. And that is coming up in pretty soon. That comes up August 13th is our first one. So that is like 3 weeks from now, more or less. So get excited to write a short film. If you're brand new at screenwriting, maybe you want to start with something shorter, so to sort of get your bearings and learn the basics before you try to write something feature length. So something to think about. What else? If you want to enroll, scriptcamp.net/classes and buy a particular class, or you can sign up for your membership free trial here, scriptcamp.net/membership. So try that out. So I'm not going to go over all the slides from yesterday. I'm going to move through all this intro stuff that we did and kind of just cut back to a recap on the basics of how do we come up with a workable movie idea? And so I'm going to share that document that we were looking at yesterday, and we're going to be looking at it more today, and also just working a bit more on this and doing live idea generation and brainstorming and all the stuff that we need to do to come up with premises and fill out the basic outline of the plot. Because by coming up with a strong working premise, you should already know what a couple scenes are going to be just from the basic description of it. Here, so go ahead and click on this link if you want to join and follow along on our Google document, or you can just watch on the screen here, and it won't be as high resolution, so the text might be a little tougher to read, and also I'll be controlling it, so if you want to control the, where you're looking at, then I would follow the document instead. So what did we go over yesterday? So breaking the story is about, or that's a term that we use to, breaking essentially means figuring out. So you're going to figure out what happens in the movie before you begin. And this is so key to screenwriting, because we can't really, it's much more difficult to feel out and figure out a script as you go. It's really difficult to discovery write a script when you have such careful and limited use of space available to you, and you have just really strict limitations on what you're able to do. There are format restrictions, and there are just like the limitations of how does a visual medium like a movie work. There's all kinds of things that are specific to filmic storytelling, and making sure that we have a strong premise up front will just act like that kind of foundation of the house. It's like that concrete base that you make sure that if something starts to tip and collapse, you know it's not because the concrete at the base of I've never made a house before, but you've never, the concrete at the base of the structure is not the thing that has caused it to start to tip or sag. It should be because of some other element. You should know that the premise itself should be rock solid before you use it to start to try to build a house on top of. It is the foundation for everything. So that's why, for the most part, although people do come at movies from different directions, the best way to become a high concept, or to become, a Hollywood screenwriter, is to start thinking more in terms of high concept stories, which can most often be summed up very easily and very simply. Almost always that conflict and that the spine of the story is going to be generated from the idea of one world clashing with another world, which is why we have these little cliches like it's this meets that, it's Die Hard on a blimp, it's whatever it is. So those are used in sort of communicating what a story is, those comps or comparable titles. Really useful to have a sense of what those are before you start, because that is just it's part of that groundwork. It's an easy way of expressing what that concrete foundation for your story is. So this thing meets that thing, and you want to be picking movies for these. At least one of them should be a movie. Like, don't comp 2 TV shows for a movie. And if you're writing comps for a TV show, don't do 2 movies or a video game in a movie or something like that. You can pick one thing that's not in your medium, but don't do 2 things that aren't in your medium, or else it will just seem like, how is this a TV show? Or how is this a movie? Understand? So yeah, when you're picking comps, don't pick more than 2 things. You want to just be usually thinking of it in terms of, we have the world or style of, or the world of the first thing with the style or approach of the second thing, which might be something like, if we're doing, let's say, if we start with the foundation of, let's think of, like, if we're doing Die Hard meets, I'm trying to pick a weird example that's not way too weird. I was going to say Die Hard meets Mean Girls. Die Hard meets Mean Girls to me says, okay, yeah, let's use that as an example. It's stupid, but let's use it. So Die Hard meets Mean Girls tells me we're in the world of Die Hard, but with the style or approach of Mean Girls. I would assume this was a comedy about the sort of, very competitive members of an elite squad of soldiers or something like that. Does that make sense? But the second thing is really telling you more what the genre is, not the world that we're playing in. Does this make sense to you guys? So Die Hard meets Mean Girls equals a comedy set in the world of military stuff, usually is what people are going to think. This is not an exact science, but I have just found this is an easy way to think of it. And what would the opposite be then? What would Mean Girls meets Die Hard be?
It's like a high school world meets action.
Yeah, so that is sort of the implication, which to me almost sounds like we probably shouldn't write that movie. we don't probably want to see shootouts happening in schools in modern day America in action films. Not really a subject that most people are going to be super happy to see in their theater. So the point is, yeah, try to pick your, like, we don't want to see a squad of Mean Girls with assault rifles in their high school. That I don't quite know what that movie is. So if your comps are just crazy, if your comps are like, I don't know, it's Daddy Daycare meets Schindler's List, we'll be like, what on earth are you talking about? The second thing will really, really overpower the first thing, and no one knows what the idea is anymore. I'm just going to take these headphones off because they're just not working. All right, so we need to make sure that you're not picking comps that are totally overpowering what the basic idea of what you're trying to do is. So make sure that you are not picking crazy comps. You don't get bonus points if someone doesn't know the movie you're trying to comp. So we talked about assembling just the basics of a premise in terms of hook, character, journey, and then this kind of optional element that I call like the icing on top of it. This is a really hard one to describe, and it's very nebulous, and it's sort of difficult to nail down precisely what I mean by the icing on top. It can be just some element that brings everything together, that ties the whole package into one cohesive whole, and it's often going to be in the form of some snappy title or like maybe a style that I always struggle to exactly express what I mean by this because it can be so many different things. Almost always the title is the last bow on top of a high concept movie package, but sometimes I've seen it be other stuff in a way that I can't quite expand on just yet. Maybe I'll come back to that later, but almost always with a high concept movie, there will be some title that just perfectly describes what's going on in it. And often you're going to look for something that means two different things because it's a combination of two different worlds. So one thing clashing with the other thing. So a great high concept title is going to be something that suggests both of those things. So think of these perfect titles like Transparent on Amazon. It's about someone's parent who comes out as trans. That sort of like expresses exactly what it's about and also hints at the theme of the story, which is about honesty and truth. And, you see right through somebody. They are transparent. You know and understand them. So that's the sort of idea behind the icing is we're trying to pick a title or some other element that just makes it feel like, oh, of course these are things that go together. This is part of one cohesive whole. So I want to define the other elements really quick. We have hook. That's going to be essentially the way that your main character is going about solving a problem in a way that clearly fits into some sort of genre, but it's some twist on that genre that we haven't exactly seen before. So we have this first one, we broke down Last Night in Soho, which is kind of a murder mystery. But the hook is the girl, the detective character, the main character, has to use psychic visions of the past as her clues to solve the murder. So that's the hook. It's a murder mystery, but here's how we go about it. And that's almost always the first thing you're going to want to think of. High concept storytelling, the hook is the foundation, the ground rock, the very core of an idea. So you want to make sure that is really, really strong first. And that's why often I'll come up with titles first. And then if you start with a catchy title, sometimes you will be able to just build a really great high concept premise off of that. And to that end, a little later today, I'm just going to give you guys a little preview of what we're doing. We're going to be writing out the plot for a theoretical action rom-com that I have come up with that's called Tango Down. And Tango Down, I don't exactly know what it is yet, but I know it involves some sort of Tom Clancy, Rainbow Six sort of SEAL team guy who enters... It's going to be like Miss Congeniality sort of thing. I think he has to enter a dance, maybe ballroom or tango dancing contest in order to root out some kind of terrorist that's already infiltrated it, and he ends up falling in love with his partner, I'm guessing. So we're going to come up with the plot beats for this theoretical, silly action rom-com called Tango Down later. And perhaps, if we do it quick enough and everything goes well, we can come up with ideas for the sequel, which is called Slice the Pie. Or maybe it's not a sequel, maybe it's just like a romance rom-com anthology, but Slice the Pie would be about, let's do a Hallmark romance / military action. And that's going to be about military action guy goes to small town and has to start working at a bakery. So those are just fun. It's just fun to come up with crazy premises sometimes and stuff that it works. I mean, it might not be something that I would ever really write for real. I'm not going to actually write Tango Down or Slice the Pie. If one of you guys wants to, feel free. But like, I'm just doing this as an exercise and as practice to see where those different pieces fall into place in just the expression of the premise alone and how we can extrapolate that then into a full story. I want to stop for questions before I move any further into this. I still have to define hook, character, and journey. I think that's a little clearer, but let me just pause right there and see if there's any questions so far based on anything we've talked about. Questions on premise and hook? Okay, if there's no questions, we will continue on. And also feel free to use the text chat, which you can find on the left-hand side of your Discord window, and I can bring up just like that. Okay, so let's mostly be working on our Google Doc today, though, because that's where you can, like, we can all be just looking at the same page, and you don't have to use this low res, Discord stream chat thing. Excuse me. Okay, so what? Oh, here's a question. Bidhan asks, what, or maybe Bithan, what specifically is the hook, if I may ask? The hook of what? So are you asking just what, like, what is the definition of the term? The hook is your approach to this genre that is setting it apart from every other movie of that genre. So, for instance, we talked about Last Night in Soho is a murder mystery, but the hook is the detective has to use psychic visions of the past in order to solve the murder. So that's the hook of that movie. That's the thing that is the unique way that the character is going to try to solve the problem that is going to stand apart from other things that we've seen before and feel original and fresh and be immediately interesting on a plot level. It's going to be hopefully something enough that is going to grab someone's attention and make them say, just from hearing the hook, I want to read that because I want to see how that plays out or how you pull that off. Make sense? Any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, let's refresh really quick on what we're not doing. What we're not doing is coming up with a logline just now, but this is super important when you are going into screenwriting, is that you should know what loglines are and how they work, because this is one simple sentence that expresses the basics of the idea. We aren't focusing on loglines as much, but in our feature boot camps, we do MTV. We really, really want to make sure we have a super strong logline. And just having a strong logline will keep you on track when you're writing and also be a tool that you can use to pitch the story to someone, because if they don't know what they, if you're trying to get someone to read something that will take 1 to 2 hours of their time investment, then you want to make sure that you hook them in with just the one sentence version of that, because so much of what we're doing is arranging little versions of our story into different shapes and sizes. We have the one sentence version of the story, which we call the logline. We have a one sheet, which is a type of deliverable that you write as a screenwriter that is the entire movie just on one page, and that's going to be written out in prose. You don't have to format that all fancy, but you also can't cheat and make your text really tiny. So you have to just write out a couple paragraphs explaining the whole story. It's like a paragraph per act, basically, but the middle paragraph can be a bit beefier considering it's the second act, and we always say the second act is the movie. So from the one sheet, you have the 3 sheet, which is going to be the longer version, and that's going to be like usually a page per act or a little more than a page for the second act. And then you have the treatment, which can be, between, I've seen 20 pages around normal, and then 50 pages would be like a really, really, really detailed treatment, but that is basically just writing out every scene in prose form. And then you're going to have to be able to work with a producer on that in order to develop the story as they want you to. But the essentials are that you need to be able to unfold your story into many different shapes and sizes. And the, really, really smallest one, the one you should start with, is the logline. So I'm not going to go over exactly how to write a good logline now, just because we're not so much focusing on this today. We are more looking at how to make a great premise and come up with plot points. But just look at the template if you're not sure what a logline would look like. It's when inciting incident occurs, an adjective protagonist must conflict or else stakes. That's the basics here. We want to know who the main character is, because a movie idea is not complete without a main character. A couple is not a main character. A group of engineers is not a main character. A gang of teenagers is not a main character. You must have a protagonist highlighted in the basic premise of the movie. Almost no exceptions. So the hook might be some sense of some ironic twist to the journey that your character is making. It might be some new or surprising point of view that we haven't really seen before. It might be just some variation on familiar elements that work together to create this sense of familiar and strange. We're looking for something familiar that has been clashed with something strange. If we're thinking Tango Down, we are familiar with action type, special forces type movies. We've seen dance contest type movies before. My idea is to mash those two things together, where we see this one world connect and clash with this other world and bounce off of it. I think we had a question on the chat. Will this be on YouTube? Yes, this is already on YouTube. This is broadcasting live on YouTube. So yeah, you can watch this back anytime you want. It was posted sort of instantly, simultaneously. Thanks for the question, Alien Boy. Let's not look at my loglines or sketchbook stuff right now. Let's look at the broad outline of 3-act structure. And if you scroll down to our, the 3rd page of our shared document now, you'll see just a list of all these plot points sort of written out. But the really broad overview of structure is something that I'm not going to go into today as much. If you've been in my other classes, then you've definitely heard this a million times before, and my goal is to sort of get you to burn this into your brain, not so to say that you always have to follow every single step of this to the letter, but just so you know what the expectations are and you know what a story of this length should be feeling like and what should be happening in the general sort of benchmarks of where we are. So to this end, in order to figure out the major plot points of a movie, we need to just we need to plug in like at least one sentence for each of these points. At that point, we will have a pretty comprehensive outline of what needs to happen in each section. And there's a couple that we can fill in already if you just have a strong premise, because, there's some scenes that we will just need to have. For instance, if it's a buddy team-up movie, well, we need to have the scene where the buddies meet for the first time. And that is, you put that on the board right away. So when you're outlining from the top, when you're breaking a story, you put down everything that you know where it goes from the very beginning. So I'm just going to really quickly tell you what each of these things are in like a sentence or two. I'm not going to go in deeply into structure, but just if you aren't familiar with this and want to know what we're talking about and what we're doing, and maybe just explaining some of the shorthand that you might see here, I'm just going to very quickly go through it. So our movie's 3 acts, right? First act is around 25 I'm writing mostly 90-page movies, so that's why I've sort of written this out for 90 pages. In my genres, which are action, thriller, and horror, which is what I'm mostly writing, then 90 pages is what you sort of want to aim for. And it's okay if you overshoot it a little bit or if you're a little bit under, but that generally is like my sweet spot, so that's what I've written this out for. Certain genres might just require more pages, and that's cool to add a little bit to this. But the point is, the middle, the second act, that is the movie. That's 40 pages in my normal sort of structure. 40 minutes right in the center. That is the longest of all of them, and it's the thing that is going to be used to establish the core of your premise, because when you come up with a premise, it should immediately suggest and bloom in the mind to imply like 4 or 5 rock-solid awesome sequences that use both halves of what it is that you're clashing and colliding in the high-concept idea right in the middle of the story before you do anything else. So it might sound a little weird to start, how do I start with the middle of the story? But you really need to, because if you have a premise that is strong enough, you should immediately be able to rattle off 4 or 5 sequences that we could use that premise to its full extent. Otherwise, we're going to run the risk of getting this very common note that you see in development, which is the movie did not explore its premise to the fullest extent of its potential. So if you're doing a movie called, Mermaid Cop, then we want to make sure we have 4 sequences right in the middle where the cop's policing is being complicated by his mermaidness, and his mermaidness is being complicated by his policing. That's how you know that the premise is engaging and really, really working. So I'm going to just very quickly go through these points here. Act 1 starts with the intro, which is your character's sort of normal, everyday world in whatever form that takes. Often we're going to be establishing what they're missing, what they want, what is their problem, what do they need, what need are they having denied to them, and what is going to be driving and motivating them. What do they care about? And our catalyst happens around pages 10 to 15 nowadays, often. It should not take longer than 20 pages. Don't take longer than 20 pages in the catalyst. But around page 10 in quicker paced, like really grabby genres like thrillers, you want to have some moment that sets the plot in motion. And that's going to be something that could be a coincidence. It doesn't have to be a coincidence, but this could be your character. They get the job. They meet their romantic partner for the first time. They find the treasure chest full of gold. Whatever it is that kicks the story off. This is, of course, going to be followed by a moment, which is sometimes in a hero's journey, looked at as the refusal of the call to adventure. I call this trying the locks. So if we imagine that the catalyst is the unveiling of a door, now your character realizes that on the other side of that door, because they can see through the glass window or whatever, on the other side is something that they want, usually, or like it's something that is interesting to them, that some opportunity that has been unveiled to them. It might be a job they've gotten, it might be like an assignment they've been given, or it might be, they've met someone cool, now we're wondering, do I want to accept to go on a date or not with this person? Whatever it is that they're wondering, there might be a couple scenes where your characters are debating this with each other, what to do next and how to kind of process this and move forward. If it's an easy choice to make, then it probably is not a dramatic enough catalyst, or it's not a dramatic enough intro to your movie. So movies aren't about easy journeys and easy decisions. So once we get through the catalyst and the trying the lock sequence, where we will be sort of weighing the cost of everything that your character is about to go through, or maybe asking, are they ready for this, or is the world ready for them to go on this quest? Are they ready to accept the consequences of what it is they're about to do? Because those consequences should be highlighted to them, and it might be, if this is your character gets superpowers, then trying the locks might have a sequence where they break the news to their family, and their family's like, you can't be a superhero, we might be in danger. We really just want to emphasize what the cost and challenges up ahead will be, your character will eventually have to go through that door and then break into Act 2. And that Act 2 is going to represent the sort of upside-down version of the first act that we established. So our second act is going to be now engaging fully with the premise, as you have described it in the logline. So your scenes and the premise scenes are going to be what you wrote in the logline, basically. So what you wrote in the logline is, once you know that, you already know what your premise scenes are describing. So I'll show you how we can use that to just fill something out on the board right away, pretty soon. But then you're going to be exploring those sort of trailer moments, all the great stuff that you promised in the poster and the trailer. If it's a movie about a guy running away from aliens, we're running away from aliens in this section. Until we get to the midpoint, which is going to be an escalation of stakes, where the danger increases, the breadth and scope of the problem widens in some way, and perhaps we have some early victories, but now is when things start to turn, and the escalation sequence will represent the enemy antagonistic forces of whatever form tightening their grip and sending in reinforcements, and your main character starts to have various costs exacted upon them. So we're hitting them where it hurts now. They're starting to lose relationships and friendships, and perhaps even deaths of people they care about, depending on the genre. It's going to be the bad guys are getting closer and are increasing in their threat until we hit the all is lost. It's going to see your character either fails at their goal, or it seems like they have failed at their goal. Sometimes it's like they failed at their goal, now they have to pick a new goal, or maybe they even achieve their goal, but that they don't want it anymore. That can make a really nice sort of all is lost moment where, we get to the top of the CEO company, whatever, but by the time we get there, we've lost everyone close to us. So this is going to be a movie about your character having to resurge from that low point, and that makes a nice all is lost moment. So the pit of despair is what follows, where we are sort of asking, why have we been forsaken? And all the pain and the weight of the consequences of what has happened in this journey is fully being expressed upon your character. We're wallowing in shame and sadness until we get to our break into 3, which is that last moment that's going to say, hey, because of the journey we went on, now your character will be inspired, or they will have the tools they need in order to take one last swing at the problem in whatever form. It should just be something that we cannot have happened except for the movie. I mean, we don't want Luke Skywalker, when he's going to shoot the missile into the Death Star, he has that moment where he flashes back and he hears Obi-Wan say, use the Force, turn off the computer. That's sort of, I don't know if that's that movie's break into 3, but that's the sort of thing we're looking for, where it's something that you learned on this journey, or something that we learned about the world or yourself. That's going to be what's motivating you to take one last swing in Act 3. Act 3 is going to have your finale, which is that big last final battle in whatever form that takes. And then following that, we have the sort of an epilogue that goes pretty quick. In a feature film, you'll have like 2 or 3 scenes to wrap up. Usually, you don't want to overstay your welcome. Okay, that's a really quick overview of structure, but hopefully that at least gives you enough that you know what these different terms are that we're talking about. AIL stands for all is lost. Trying the locks represents that sort of debate sequence where we're building up to stepping through that door into the second act. I hope that's clear. I'm not going to take questions on this right now, just because I don't want to go way deeper into structure than this.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What does this say after midpoint? The E? Well, I can't read what the word is.
It's escalation.
Okay, cool.
I'll also just link you the slideshow so you can read through it on your own. Also, if you're watching on Discord, the resolution will be a little lower than it is on our different streaming places. So like on YouTube, it should be easier to read. But regardless, let me just share this and you can browse it on your own time.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So let's go back to our sort of shared document here, and I want to talk about. Let's do. Well, we did a couple fun ones yesterday. Remember these? We came up with a bunch of wacky titles, and we came up with the hook, character journey, and some idea of the broader picture of the premise. So we had Last Man Sitting, Can't Wait Till You're Dead, The Movie You Never Asked For, Diary of the Lost Car. I still think that's a great title. What we're going to do is let's start with Tango Down. So I want to just see some suggestions in the chat as I sort of brainstorm and figure out what the movie essentially is. So keep yourselves muted for now, but feel free to use the chat and let me bring it up. Oh, it is up. There we go. Let's break down what are the hook and character and journey, and just what are the basics of what we're doing in this movie. So remember, we said Tango Down. Oops. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so Tango Down. I don't really write rom-coms, so that's why I wanted to figure this out. I've never written one before, and this will be the first time. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. This is an action/rom-com. I mean, we have the clear pun-based title, which tells us what the high-concept hook is right off the bat. We are going to do military guy in a dance type situation. Maybe he turns out to be really, really good at dancing. So we have to ask ourselves, who's a sort of military action guy who would be the least likely person to actually have to let's say the least likely person to become a great dancer. And so feel free to throw some suggestions in the chat, but I'm going to throw a couple just ideas right off the bat. Someone who hates dancing or thinks it's stupid. We might have someone who's incredibly uncoordinated. You can look at movies like, Miss Congeniality. Even the trailer makes it really clear that they're trying to play. I mean, it's Sandra Bullock, so it's a little bit hard to buy. But they're like, she's the clumsiest, ugliest cop on the force, basically. And she's not that bad. I mean, it's a movie, so we're supposed to buy like, oh, she eats pizza and drinks beers, so she's not like the other. She's not like the girls on the team. She's like one of the guys, right? She's the last person we'd expect to win a beauty contest. So what we're trying to do with this genre is we're usually trying to pick the person who's the least likely to be able to succeed at this. We have some things in the chat. Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. Okay, so those are characters that are, first of all, actors that are often in movies together. But what is it about those characters that makes you think that they are unlikely to be a fantastic dancer? Is it just physical size, or is it his personality in some way? Who is someone who we would not think would possibly ever become a competitive ballroom tango dancer? Let's bring up the chat here. Frightful Fest says Kevin is 3 feet. I think he's a little taller than 3 feet. Rocco Bavo says they should be partnered together. Okay, Kevin Hart and Dwayne Johnson are the two dance partners. Maybe we could do that. I was thinking this would be a rom-com where the two dance partners fall in love. If we really want to do Kevin Hart falls in love with Dwayne Johnson, then we could do that. Let's look at some more ideas. So we're trying to pick someone who is unlikely to become a dancer, but they should bring something else to the table, because that's going to be at the heart of these high concept rom-coms. We have somebody from one world that is able to actually leverage those skills into the other world in some way. So I guess we might ask, maybe we actually want someone who is pretty agile, special forces, like a ninja type guy, might actually be really good at dancing and can bring his sort of coordination to the or maybe like tactical planning. Maybe we should think of in terms of what can he bring to this that a tango dancer wouldn't necessarily have access to. The sort of tactical planning of a Rainbow Six sort of Tom Clancy squad leader might be something we could leverage in. And let's think especially in terms of the climax. What is something that would make for a sort of great climax that is going to be using our premise to its full potential? So we might say something like this is going to be, if this is I don't know exactly how this would play out yet, but imagine our climax is we have to reveal who the bad guy is by getting a bunch of dancers to coordinate somehow and sort of make like a very tactical, imagine like a breach and clear sort of plan, but to coordinate a bunch of dancers on the floor in order to, perhaps create a distraction, something like that. So I'm always thinking in terms of what is the climax going to be, and how is the central premise going to play into that, because that should be something that we can really, we can get a lot of mileage from it in the high concept world. Okay, so we're looking for someone who hates dancing or thinks it's stupid, maybe someone very uncoordinated, and then we can think of what our other character, I'm saying her right now, I'm thinking that's how it would go, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, where we are trying to figure out what that person would bring to the table too. So I'm going to just sort of start picking stuff unless you guys have some awesome suggestions here. Let's check the chat. Firetwell says Shaquille O'Neal, or could be like Hitch. Okay, Hitch being, I haven't seen it, but I think I know the premise is a guy who's like an expert in pickup artist type stuff or maybe dating advice, and he's forced to sort of help someone become like, to get the girl of his dreams, I think is what is happening in that one, but he's Kevin James, so we think he's super lame. I think that's the basis of that. Yeah, we could do some stuff like that. Let's see. What else? Rocco Balvo says, in Zoolander, the song Relax is a trigger for the assassin to kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia. Maybe a song cue could be cool. Okay, to trigger something, or if they're competing against a humanoid robot. Nice ideas. I could see some of these things happening. Maybe the music could be involved, or maybe it turns out the assassin isn't one of the dancers at all, but we learn later the terrorist they're trying to find is one of the musicians, one of the accompanists instead. So we have to sort of like change tactics to root them out. Dwayne Johnson teaches Kevin Hart how to dance to impress his college crush. Well, that just sounds like a different movie. We're doing an action comedy with that's what Tango Down is. I mean, Dwayne Johnson teaching Kevin Hart how to dance sounds interesting, but that just sounds like a comedy, a buddy comedy, not like what we're doing at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to start picking stuff and filling a couple things out, and then we can take a look at the plot structure and see what we already have on the board. So in terms of the hook, I'm going to say military guy. Or it could be military lady meets ballroom guy. That might be just a whole other sort of a take on it. But for now, I'm just going to say military dude in ballroom dance setting. So we see him having to be creative and use his sort of military training and tactics and all of the things that all the skills he does have in order to succeed in this new kind of world, in order to stop a high stakes situation. There we go. And along the way, I think you got to make them fall in love. So I think it'd be cool if our main character even had to sort of figure out who the terrorist might be by dancing with all the different potential partners in the class and sort of getting to know them. So he's going to be doing undercover work. So let's make the logline military dude undercover in ballroom setting. Is tango done in ballrooms, or is tango a form of ballroom dance? I don't even know, actually. I'm just going to say maybe like formal dance setting, perhaps. But tango's all about sort of being charming, like a Casanova sort of thing, as far as I understand it in my very limited experience. So let's look at who our main character will be. We have somebody who hates dancing, uncoordinated. I actually like better that he is coordinated. It'd be really tricky to imagine that somebody who had no coordination at all would even be able to get very far in a dance contest, or like a situation where he has to remain undercover as someone who knows what he's doing. You know, special forces people, they do use pretty good footwork, don't they? Maybe there's something in that. In any case, let's take a look. So let's say that he's going to be the let's make him the squad leader. And he's going to be, let's make, if we're thinking in terms of journey, let's think maybe the journey might be that our main character has to, well, let's look at the basis of tango. And let's look at what how tango is defined. And maybe there will be a hint as to what the internal journey is there to find tango. Ballroom, it is ballroom. Ballroom dance originating in Buenos Aires, characterized by marked rhythms, postures, and abrupt pauses. Maybe he needs to find his rhythm. See how we can try to find the implication of the journey just from the subject matter that we're talking about. It would make a nice journey for a tango-based movie if our main character has to learn some principle of tango as a way to change everything in his life, not just to win this one contest. And thus, the story becomes the journey of the military squad leader, not only catching the terrorists, but also changing as a person. And that's a lot of what we have to make sure to include in the spine of the story to begin with. Here's a comment from Lazima. Military guy meets lady at a dance, learns to tango to get close to her. Her dad happens to be the leader of a drug cartel. Okay, he's inadvertently acting as an undercover agent when she introduces him to the father. Okay, that's one direction you could definitely take it. Well, let's hold that in our heads for a moment as we just break out the character first and figure out the character first, and then when we move into plot, maybe we can look at some more ideas for what could happen. But feel free to keep adding in ideas in the chat, please do. Okay, so if we're gonna say our character has no rhythm, I do like that. Let's say, I mean, rhythmless is like a weird word to describe somebody, but we'll just use that now. Let's say a squad leader with no rhythm, and maybe even we would see in our opening scene like he's a great agent, but he always swoops in and smashes through the window with his SMG before anyone else is ready for him to go. So like that could be his flaw, that he doesn't have the sense of timing and rhythm that he needs. Maybe we'll say timing / rhythm, something he can only learn from this dance type scenario. No sense of timing. I like that. And so his journey will be he'll gain a sense of timing, which would be, you know, when to act and when to wait. and when to, or maybe we could say, when to step forward and when to step back, if that fits into our sort of tango theme a little bit better, or maybe there's some tango terms we could be using here. Anyway, so yeah, I think we have a good picture of this. We have a competent and very, active, physically squad leader, but he just doesn't have a sense of timing. He's always bumping into his other guys at the doorway as they're breaching it. I've been playing too many tactical shooters, haven't I? But as they're breaching and clearing and stuff, he's always bumping into his companions. He's always pushing people out of the way. He always needs to be in there first and get all the glory. And that's going to be at the heart of the character's flaw and also the thing he needs to change. When often the flaw is going to reflect something that they need to change. And there's a difference between a flaw and a handicap, because a character flaw is something that they can, or it's sort of played as if that is something they should overcome in the story, whereas a handicap is something that is holding them back and might be something that they still need to find a way to overcome, but it's not painted as like a character deficiency or something like that. So it might be, and some things can be played either way. Like, think of like an anger problem, right? That could be either one. That might be something the character is actually working to overcome in the story, how to rein in my emotions, or it might be a story about them on a different journey, and the anger is just a handicap that keeps getting in their way again and again. So think in both terms when you're designing your characters. What's both the flaw and what could be a handicap, or like something just that makes their journey more uphill difficult in whatever way. So here's a comment. He's used to taking control and leading. I like that. So he's used to leading. Is there like a leader and a follower in Tango? Or how does it work? Or what is it called exactly? The leader, whether it's the man or the woman, sets a decisive course and protects the follower from obstacles, while the follower transforms the lead into artistry. That sounds like something we can use in our first act, because that's also describing what makes a really good military leader, isn't it? Oh, this is great. Somebody write this. So let's put that on the board just so we have. I would put that in my sketchbook right away as soon as I saw one of the principles of Tango is also one of the principles of being a squad leader. It's great. Whether it's a man or a woman, so it doesn't have to be one or the other. So of course, she's going to have to be the leader on the dance floor. He doesn't know how to take orders. So, that's going to be kind of our pair up. That's going to be like the sort of icing here is going to be that great title, of course, and our great central relationship, which is leader needs to learn to follow. And maybe we could say follower needs to learn to lead. And that's going to be at the core of what makes a really great buddy team-up story. And what do I mean by buddy team-up story? Is that limited to just, one cop that one cop is angry and one cop follows the rules? Or what else could a buddy story be? What else counts as a buddy story, would you say? What follows the same sort of arcs and conventions? Any ideas? Feel free to unmute and answer the question on voice if you want to as well. Rocco says, two opposing sides that come together as one. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. They don't always have to be opposing to each other. They don't have to be like diametrical. They don't have to be enemies. Although a lot of stories have that thing where they start on opposite sides and then they start out like, Romeo and Juliet sort of stuff. A nerd could never be with a jock, that sort of thing. And I mean, if we were painting nerds and jocks as kind of like, natural enemies, then that would sort of make sense. But the point is, yeah, it's two different people need to come together to work together on something, and they all will follow this sort of general arc of, at first we don't like each other, then we are forced to work together, and through our trials we will get to like each other more and also see what one brings to the table that the other one lacks, and then they will start gelling and working better together, and they will become that sort of great version of their team, reluctantly at first, but then they will start to realize they need each other until we hit that separation, that point that says now they have to break up, and now they've one of them has betrayed the other. They have the lie is revealed, whatever it is that is going to cause a split or fissure between those characters, and then they're going to be separated for a while in our sort of Dark Night of the Soul region of the script. They're going to be, that's when you you broke up with your girlfriend, so you go to the drive-thru at 2 a.m. and get a bunch of Wendy's, and she's at home crying and eating the ice cream, and we're both like, oh, we miss each other so much. And then, but now we got to run to stop the villain, so we have to get our characters back together to stop the villain before they accomplish their plan. They apologize, or they come to some kind of reconciliation with each other, or at least enough that they're able to continue and finish the story. Then they work together to defeat the villain or not. Usually they do in this sort of story. And then we sort of see, yeah, we do work well together. We should stay a team. Why don't we call ourselves the, blank Avengers, the dastardly duo, whatever it is. So that's the relationship arc. And like I said, I don't write romance stories, or I don't write romance genre stories or rom-com genre stories, so this is sort of fun for me to use these tools, because even though I don't write them, I do know the expectations, at least the big ones, the plot expectations. I don't really know as much of the nuance as a fan of the genre would, so that's why you guys can feel free to weigh in and chat. If you guys actually watch romances and write them, then help me out if you can. So Joe Toole says, I like, in terms of timing, he also has a problem rushing to conclusions with relationships too. Sure. Maybe he sees the worst in people too quickly and needs to take 2 steps back to take a step forward. That's nice. That's always nice when you can take the subject matter and turn it into an emotional or just like a thematic idea in the movie. I love to do this I do video game adaptations and movies that are sort of like video games, and I pitch on video game IP a lot. And one of my favorite ways to approach it is take the game mechanics and reinterpret them as emotional themes. So somebody has to take 2 steps back you have to take a step back to take a step forward. Something like that, which would be like a mechanic of tango. If we turn that into an emotional theme for the character, or like a journey theme for the character too, that's always the best. I love when you can do that. He needs to slow it down. Yeah, nice comments, Rocco. And Joe Toole. Okay, so I like this, and we have... Oh, so at the basis of, if you have a buddy story, like I was saying, the sort of axis, if you're looking for how to design a character off of your main character in relationship with or in contrast to your main character, often the nice thing to do is just, if we have 2 buddies, they have to learn to work together. One of them needs to learn a value that is possessed by the other, and the other one needs to learn a value that is possessed by the other one. So if they are on opposite sides of the same spectrum, then you can have that really strong journey, and just it starts to click in that really great, all the gears are turning sort of high concept way. So if he's a leader that needs to learn to follow, we make her a follower that needs to learn to lead. And so they're going to have to learn that from each other. So let's make her very sort of shy, very introverted, never wants to be the one to make the decision or to potentially mess up, and that's always holding her back on the dance floor. Maybe even that is the reason why she's never making top dancer or whatever the dancer of the month or whatever the slot is that they have. Something's always holding her back from that. It's that she doesn't know how to lead. So that's why the teacher puts her in the leading role for this upcoming performance, recital, whatever it is. It's a little bit, almost sounds a little like Barry. I've been watching a lot of Barry as well on HBO, but the sort of idea of we're going to have to blend in with a group of performers and learn their sort of tactics and skills and avoid blowing our cover, that sort of idea. It definitely works like that. So I think we have the basics of this idea. I mean, are you starting to see the movie here? We have military dude needs to go undercover at a dance setting in order to root out a villain. We have the central relationship and the theme that our main character needs to learn that intersects with the theme that the secondary character needs to learn, and in such a way that it will draw them together and say they have something that they need to learn from the other one. So we already know what a bunch of scenes in our outline are going to be. So let's start plotting Tango Down. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I think this is great. It's so silly, but aren't they always? Okay, so let's look at our structure, which we have right down here. So let's scroll this all down. We'll say action rom-com, and we can figure out the exact balance of that we want to have here as well, which is the nice thing. You can have those in whatever balance you would like. It's all up to you. So let's figure it out. We have hook, character journey, icing. Okay, we would I like to usually come up with a logline of some kind. So I'm gonna just come up with a bad one for now and just sort of use it as the basis for what we're doing. So we're gonna say something like, when a how would we describe? Let's just call him uncoordinated. When an uncoordinated special forces, or we'll just call him a Navy SEAL for now. When an uncoordinated Navy SEAL, actually, let's use our inciting incident first. When an international terrorist, I don't know, isn't every terrorist sort of international? Not really. I guess domestic terrorist is the opposite. Let's just use our placeholder for now. So when a terrorist infiltrates what would it be if not a contest? I mean, you usually would want to have this sort of thing be for it's gonna be some world leaders are gonna be watching a performance. Is how this thing normally works. I think somebody mentioned Zoolander earlier, and I think that's how it works in that one. Like they're just gonna be there in the audience. So maybe a tournament. Somebody says, would world leaders watch a dance tournament? I don't know. Maybe. I wonder. Is it something? So we need to pick something that the main character would actually have a chance of being able to infiltrate. So I feel like the level of talent can't be way too high unless he's going to somehow go through a long training period before he gets to the dance contest. But I feel like, or the dance place. But I feel like we need him in there and dancing as soon as possible. So having it be, in what scenario would there be beginners or newer people dancing in front of world leaders at a close proximity? I guess is what we can ask ourselves. A national event to somewhere. We have in the chat. Fashion Week in France. Yeah, that was what they did, a fashion show in Zoolander, didn't they? Something that is a national event. Yeah, okay, so let's just maybe think it's a big performance. A tango performance. What country is tango originally from? Does anyone know? Buenos Aires. Okay. Oh, it has Cuban influences as well. Buenos Aires. I think maybe we could set it there. That sounds like a fun... Yeah, capital of Argentina. So, let's think maybe it's going to be some kind of world conference of leaders that's going to meet in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Maybe a climate conference or something like that. I don't know. Would they have tango at one of those? Maybe if it was in Brazil. So, okay. Let's be thinking... So when a terrorist infiltrates a... we'll just say... a dance troupe? A tango dance troupe. An uncoordinated Navy SEAL. Must, I kind of want to say our main character has to infiltrate something as his main course of action, and we don't want to have two use of the same word in the logline, so let's say something like when a terrorist... will that work best? Tango troop. Is there an E in there? Troop, probably. You know, uncoordinated Navy SEAL must infiltrate the tango troop. Must infiltrate. Must pose as a student, or must pose as a tango dancer to root out the, or let's say to stop him before he kills the president of Argentina. I don't know. It's a world leader conference. We can imagine there's some major figure that we need to stop from assassinating, you know, a major world player. To stop him before he, let's say... Let's just say to stop a bombing plot or something like that. We don't have to get way too specific. We know that there's a ticking time bomb on the bad guy's schemes. Joe Toole says, how would he use dance to overcome the terrorists? That's a great question. So that's something that we put in our finale. I think the terrorist has to end up being a sexy lady also. And then our main character will maybe at the finale of the movie have to dance with her and maybe fight her in a way, or sort of trip her up using tango moves that he can only have learned from his experience in the story. So I do like a dance battle of some kind against the villain in our finale sequence. All right, so let's start to fill things out. So we have a logline. We have the hook, character, and journey. And we have the icing. We have pretty much everything we need to start filling this out, see what we already can put on the board, and where we would need to then work forward or backwards to fill out the rest. Let's get into it. So, our first thing is, remember the format of a logline. It's when inciting incident, an adjective, protagonist, must conflict, or else, or before stakes. We have those things here, and we know where those things go. So your inciting incident, that's the catalyst. I use those terms interchangeably. That's going to be around, page 12 to 15. We have the adjective protagonist. That's usually who they are at the start of the story. So that's going to be your intro section, is going to be us establishing who they are and what's missing from his life and what his flaw is and what unique tactic he might be using. Then we have conflict. That's going to be most of Act 2. Act 2 to end, but we'll say it just basically broadly describes Act 2. Before stakes, that's going to be the worst thing that could possibly happen. It's probably going to be your all is lost moment, or it seems like your character is going to fail at stopping this bad thing from happening at that all is lost moment. All right, so we've got 4 things already, just because we have a strongly worded logline as that concrete, at the base of our building. So let's start to fill things in. Inciting incident, pages 12 to 15. So that's going to be, what's our inciting incident? A terrorist infiltrates a dance troupe, or more specifically in this one, I think it's going to be our main character gets the assignment that he learns that the terrorists have infiltrated the dance group. With movies like this, often we want to have a scene of that happening towards the beginning that our main character is just not really present for, but you can do this in a couple different ways. So let's just fill in the catalyst. Let's say squad leader. Let's just call him Brad. This is Bradley Cooper, because why not? We're doing Silver Linings. Playbook, let's just call our main character Brad. Brad. Okay, so Brad gets the assignment, briefing. That's how these things always go. A terrorist group cell has infiltrated an Argentinian dance group in preparation to kill a world leader, to kill a bunch of world leaders. Maybe we could even have, if we're going to do something set in South America, maybe the ideology of the terrorist group is linked to the destruction of the Amazon or something like that. I realize that may not actually line up geographically or make as much sense, but I'm just already starting to think of where's the villain coming from and looking at the place in the world to determine, okay, what issues there could we maybe draw from to say the villain has some kind of valid point of some kind, even if they're going about, making their point in a violent, crazy way. It might be something like he's an environmentalist who sort of says that because world leaders don't care about the environment, they're killing the earth, so now we're killing these people to make a statement. Something like that. We want to have villains with motives that make sense, even in a silly genre like this. Okay, so Rocco says, what if we think it's a girl, but it turns out to be a guy, then the two have to dance off together man to man? Oh, that could be good. I could see that more if the journey of the character was more sort of a intimacy thing or of some kind, or maybe he has if he has kind of very reserved, almost homophobic tendencies. The idea of, oh crap, now I'm going to have to tango dance with a dude who's judging my every move might be sort of more in the realm of what we're doing in the story. It might work on this. I'm not quite sure. I'm just thinking, what are some different journeys that could support? But let's start filling stuff in. So we have the catalyst. Brad gets the assignment briefing. A terrorist cell has infiltrated an Argentinian dance group to kill a bunch of world leaders. So we have our ticking clock. Also, we know exactly when that's going to be. Let's say it's in... How long should he have? How long would our main character have to do this? Let's give him let's give him 1 month. The end of the month. I think that's long enough for our character to just learn enough tango dance to participate in the story. Okay, so let's start to fill other things up. So we have our intro. We know what that's going to have to establish. Uncoordinated. Squad leader. So we might understand. All right, in that case, we might want to pick a different word besides uncoordinated, because I think he's coordinating other people. But regardless, we'll say we're trying to set up that he needs to learn not just to lead, not just to be the first one to smash in there into the room with the bad guys. He needs to learn to follow, not just to lead. Maybe we'll call him brash or something like that. Overconfident. Something along those lines, I think, will be more in the lines of what we want to establish. So we may want to start with just one of those scenes where it's like an action scene at the end of his last mission or whatever. Like James Bond movies kind of start that way. So I'm not quite sure what we're doing in intro yet, but often with these also, I think we want to introduce both characters separately and have them, they both have their sort of intro scene. I think this is how rom-coms usually work. Somebody who knows rom-coms better, please tell me how these normally go. But I think a lot of the time you'll have, here's one person, and here's another person, and they both sort of seem like they're in separate journeys until they clash together. So I'm thinking let's just do that for now. So we'll say Brad and Jennifer. Yeah, Jennifer? What's the Argentinian version of Jennifer? So let's just call them Brad and Jen. So we set up Jen as well. Dancer who needs to learn to lead, always falling behind and not getting what she wants because she's a follower. So we don't have to just do one of those people's scenes and then the other person's scene. You could do a couple Brad scenes and then do a Jen scene, or however you want to mix that up. But we just already know we have to have a scene to introduce both of them in the first, act of the movie. It might be in the catalyst where we want to meet Jen. It doesn't. I don't quite know exactly how we want to do it, but I'm just going to start putting stuff on the board so we can start to figure out the movie. Atlas Cal says, "What if this plot is like from the movie This Means War?" I wouldn't know that one. Is that a rom-com? In which case, I don't really watch them, so I'm flying blind here. So let's see what else we have in our logline that we can already fill out. An uncoordinated Navy SEAL must pose as a tango dancer. So that's going to be our premise scenes. Must pose as a tango dancer, and that's going to provide us with enough that we can list out several different bullet points for different sequences there. Because that is going to be the movie. Act 2 is the movie. So Act 2, I can already describe a couple scenes to you. One, Brad and Jen dance together for the first time. And we would combine that with something like he is trying to root out the terrorist. He's got his guys on the earpiece, and he's desperately trying to identify who the bad guy is in the room. And so that's going to be the first scene where our chocolate is colliding with the peanut butter, right? Chocolate and peanut butter should be a premise or an idea that we're applying all throughout. But if they dance together for the first time, that's, we're going to start to see sparks. Well, at first, we know how this goes. They hate each other. His problem. So his bravado and her lack of it cause him to miss the bad guy. So he has a chance to sort of catch the bad guy and fails early on because of their two problems, because this is mostly going to be a story of those two things. Once we have the journey, we know a lot of the main sequences are going to revolve around our main character, Brad, needs to learn to step back and follow, and our main romantic interest, Jen, needs to learn to step up and lead. So almost all of your premise scenes should revolve around that idea. So in our first sort of dance with them together, they're going to end up in a huge mess. They fall down some stairs and end up breaking their legs, and they maybe don't break their legs, but they fall down some stairs and they miss their opportunity. He misses his opportunity to catch the bad guy. So we know at some point that the truth of what's going on is going to be revealed. Oftentimes that's going to lead to, in stories like this, lead to that all is lost moment when the truth comes out that our main character is indeed lying. He's going to have to reveal that he is in fact not here to be her dance partner. He is a special agent who's here to stop a high-stakes plot. So we want that big reveal, and I probably want to put that at the end of the escalation. Big reveal. I'm a special agent. This was a fake identity. This has all been a lie. Despite the fact that they were really starting to care for each other. Okay, so you can see how I don't even watch this sort of move on the board just from knowing how do rom-coms work? What are the promises that are inherent in this type of story? The big breakup scene. So all is lost. They break up. She can't take, his lies are too much. And our Dark Night of the Soul is going to be them on their own, and we know pretty much from the formula of how these work that they're going to get back together, because that is part of the inherent promise of romantic comedy. If the characters don't end up together and happy at the end, it's probably not a romantic comedy. So here's some more questions and comments in the chat. Could it add irony by making her a soldier? She's already below him in rank, is used to taking orders. She doesn't know. Oh no, so I'm thinking if she has too much background or if she knows what's going on, it'll break the fun of we need to keep this secret from her. But if she's like if she's a soldier as well, she's going to be able to tell that he's not a dancer very quickly. Yeah, I think we want to keep it secret and play that game and have more fun with the basic premise of he's not just joining a dance group, he's infiltrating a dance group, which means that he needs to keep his cover up. So let's see if we can fill out anything else, and then we'll move to a different idea because I want to do a newer one that I didn't come up with and that we can figure out now. So let's just plug in a couple other things. We want to make sure we have at least one thing for each section here. I'm just going to space this down to the next page. We have our intro. We have our catalyst. We have our trying the lock scene is going to be, our sequences are going to be, he, prepares for the class at the gym. He's like, great, I'll do a bunch of pull-ups and push-ups and get ready. And they're like, wait, that's not going to help you at all. He's mocked by his peers for having no rhythm at all. Maybe we could even start this at a sort of an office dance party and we watch our main character making an absolute fool of himself on the dance floor. Or maybe it would be, I'm not quite sure. Let's come back to that. Here's a comment from Rocco. To raise the stakes and escalate, it's an outdoor tango competition where it starts to rain. Oh, that could be good. Football games also go rain or shine. Perhaps the competition continues if it rains or shines. The stakes are higher because it's slippery. Yeah, I mean, even if it was on a sort of covered pavilion, which I don't think they make you dance in the rain, especially if it's for world leaders, but people's shoes would be wet and it would still make the ground slicker. So yeah, that'd be an interesting complication for a scene in this, maybe in the premise scenes. Let's just add a couple more things on here. We don't want to spend way too long on this. So trying the locks, he's mocked by his peers for having no rhythm. He tries to practice at home and ends up falling down and I don't know, he smashing his favorite cabinet of china, whatever it is. Like, we're still through all of these scenes, we're still getting to know the character. We're still sort of situating in the world and setting our expectations for suspension of disbelief. So we want to make sure that our early comic sequences and early comedic set pieces are going to be of the same nature that the rest of the movie is going to basically play in. So like, if we're going to have a bunch of crazy slapstick stuff later where our main character is, I don't know, getting in wacky, high-stakes physical situations where he doesn't really get that hurt, and we don't have to worry about, like, realistic consequences, then we want to make sure we establish that in the first act. So, in our scene where he falls down while he's trying to practice dancing at home using, like, a manual or something like that, he might, like, smash through his window, but he lands in the yard, and he's like, I'm fine. Well, that would be something that would be setting the expectations for how physical action was going to work in the world. So just a note to be always thinking of, how do I build those expectations early on in such a way that I won't deviate from them and throw off the audience, because you're acting with the full knowledge that suspension of disbelief narrows in scope as to the things that the audience will allow to be plausible and congruent as the story moves on. So we want to set up in our first act, is this going to be a really violent action comedy, or is this going to be more like, a little bit lighter in tone, and you can take your grandma to see this? Or is this going to be an action comedy that's something like Jump Street, where we're going to have somebody, get their, private parts shot off with a gun, and it's sort of played for laughs? We got to kind of pick what angle we're going with it exactly. I don't need to pick that now, but just first couple scenes are the things that set that tone, so just be very aware of that. So Trying the Locks is going to be, he isn't ready, but he, time is running out. He has to join, even though he has to join the group, even though his, what do we want to say, his skills aren't up to par. So our break into 2 is probably going to be, he shows up at the dance class, or he shows up at the dance, what's it called, group. So Brad shows up at dance group, and he meets, what's her name? Jen. So then our premise scenes, we're going to have the meeting Jen scene, and they dance together for the sort of first time. Let's make that just the first sort of leading scene of our premise scenes. We get to know each other by dancing, so we're combining the meet and greet scene and also the first dance scene, because I think at a dance group they might even do that. They might be like, oh, let's get to know each other by dancing with them. I could see that happening. So he misses an early opportunity to weed out the bad guy. We have a couple other premise scenes that are going to be things like, he's got like a silenced pistol behind back. Well, that doesn't really work in real life, though. I don't want to perpetuate fake movie silencers anymore. So, but you can get the idea that that's the kind of scene we want to have. He's doing a tango, or he's in the middle of a class. There's bad guys closing in from all sides because they've caught on to him, and he's shooting them with a silenced pistol while his partner's back is turned. Like, that wouldn't really work in real life because silenced guns are still really, really loud, except if you're John Wick for some reason. But you get the idea. That's the sort of scene we want to have. So maybe he's on an earpiece. Let's have our next premise scene, or one of our premise scenes is going to be the bad guys now catch wind of what he's doing. and aim to kill him. So we're going to have that first big Brad must save his and Jen's lives and not reveal what he's up to. Secretly killing a wave of attackers during a, let's make it during a solo recital, or, you know, they get up one at a time, solo showcase or something like that. So I'm just building the types of scenes that we want to have in this. We have some questions in the chat as well. He needs to get close enough to get a clean shot as a terrorist. Yeah, that could be a great way to play one of those sequences. He needs to learn to improvise, says Joe Toole. They're too bogged down in the plan, on the routine they've built. The circumstances of the performance change. They need to adapt on the spot. Yeah, that could be another version of the journey that our character needs to go on. Usually you're trying to want to pick like one lane to go with. So for this, you'd want to pick either, does he have to learn to adapt his plan, or is it that he needs to learn how to make, like, you know, plans in advance and not just be the first one to rush into danger. So you just like pick one. Like, that's equally as valid as the one we had on here. That would work just as well. So let's just fill in our last thing. So midpoint is going to be, let's have it that we don't want her to find out about the contest or about the truth until all is lost, I think. So we want a midpoint to be things are going well. They kiss for the first time. Yeah, let's have them kiss for the first time at midpoint. So they're also just going to have to be getting closer. So we have, quote, dates that are going to be like, hey, let's meet afterwards to practice our steps, or so you can give me some extra tutoring in the gym or whatever. But those, they act kind of like dates, because if you don't have a sort of getting to know the couples, getting to know each other's sequences, I don't think it's really a rom-com usually either. They almost always have this. So it says me, who doesn't watch them, but correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, so we have these date sequences where they're getting to know each other. And also he's forced again and again to defend them and keep the group going, despite attacks by the villains. They kiss. Let's make them kiss for the first time at the midpoint, at the sort of climax of one of those sequences. We have our escalation will include that big reveal. The all is lost is going to be the breakup. And then Carmen asks, what is the terrorist actually doing at this time? Well, I'm not quite sure. I think that's going to mostly come up in escalation, probably. So we may want to have the terrorists change the plans or cause some kind of ripple, like the date gets way moved up for the performance, so they have less time than they thought they did. Or let's just say they advance their plans for now. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means, but something that adds more pressure and accelerates the danger of your main character. So our Dark Night of the Soul is going to be, we're broken up, wallowing without each other. The, what do we call it? The World Leader Conference is starting any moment now. The terrorists are getting into position. And we will want our break into 3 to be they reconnect. Apologies. I missed you. Now we need to work together. Our finale is going to be, let's try to make that our sort of last dance battle. We wanted to have a moment where we revealed who the villain really was, and maybe say it was another kind of alluring lady in the class that he didn't suspect before, that he's now going to have to dance and combat at the same time. So let's figure out where to put that reveal. I'm going to put that in escalation. Let's put that early on. So learn that let's make her sort of she'll start as sort of an alternate love interest and like rival for Jennifer, is actually the terrorist. Okay, so our last couple moments here are going to be that break into 3 as we reconnect and apologize. Our finale is going to be dance battle, where both characters demonstrate what they've learned over the story. She has learned to lead. He has learned to follow. And we use that basically to defeat the villain. Use that principle. They have to both work together and both do their things. To catch and arrest the villains. Okay, and then our epilogue is they're together now, right? And I don't know, they run their own dance school now where they use steps inspired by the tactical movement of special forces teams. I don't know. They bring in a bunch of his old companions who made fun of him at the beginning, and now they're a bunch of the instructors, right? Okay, the end. You guys get the idea a little bit of how we are able to put together an entire outline for the whole plot just based off of that rock-solid premise, because a rock-solid premise will be one that instantly allows these different scenarios to spring to mind, and we can already see the whole movie combining the fun of one world meets another world with the beats that we know would already be in that genre because we're a fan of the genre and we know its rules and its expectations really well. Any questions about how we are doing this, or how we're putting this movie together, or any questions about anything? Is there a sequel? Yes, there is. It's called Slice the Pie, and he has to work at a bakery. For those of you who don't know, Slice the Pie is a tactical movement that refers to when you sort of strafe around a corner with a gun. When you're like clearing a room, you like are aiming around the corner and you sort of like cross in front of it with your gun aimed in the area of dead space, which is where you don't know where the enemies are. So these are just jokes. They're like puns that I thought would make for funny high concept rom-coms. We don't have to do Slice the Pie next, though. I mean, that was just an example of something I was going to draw from if we need to. But let's, should we do one more? I want to make sure to take questions and make sure you guys understand how to do this first. And then we'll do another one, and I want to work with everybody more, and you guys are going to help me fill in the plot for another brand new feature film. So, questions on the process of what we're doing or of anything we've done today?
Can you just read over the initial comments right quick so I can just gather everything?
Sorry, can you ask that one more time? Can I read over the initial premise of the one we just worked on?
Yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah. So this was called Tango Down. This was a, where's the logline? When a terrorist infiltrates a dance troupe, an uncoordinated Navy SEAL must pose as a tango dancer to stop a bombing plot. Our elements of the high concept idea are the hook is military dude undercover in formal dance setting. That's the combination of worlds, military plus dance. Our character is squad leader with no sense of timing or rhythm. And our journey is he needs to gain that sense of timing, when to go forward and when to step back. Our sort of icing is that relationship with our sort of main love interest, who's the girl that needs to learn to follow, or needs to learn to lead instead of follow. So we have both of our sort of characters baked into the premise because in buddy stories, often we have to have an idea of who those two main elements of the buddy partnership are. So that's that premise there. Any questions about that?
Thank you.
Sure.
No.
Amanda says she's back and looking forward to participating. Great. We, just worked out. If somebody wants to write this, like I said, please do, because I'm never going to write this. It's just a funny idea. So a lot of the time, you're not actually going to write out every premise you come up with. It takes a certain amount of investment of time and work and energy to write things, and I have my next, 2 years of things that I'm going to write already booked up. So, yeah, go nuts with this. Somebody write it. Okay, let's do another one if there's no questions. Questions from anyone before we go on? Or anything just unclear from this that you want me to expand on? Trashy asks, is this video going to be on YouTube? Yes, it's already on YouTube, actually. It's streaming live there right now, so you can, if you're watching on YouTube, hello. And you can also watch on YouTube and rewind at any point of anything in the live stream we've done so far. Same deal on Twitch and Twitter.
Is the channel, what's the name of the channel?
On YouTube, Script Camp.
On YouTube. Say it more, Script Camp, okay.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same on Twitch, I believe. I think on Twitter we are the Script Camp. Nacho can confirm on that. All right. If there are no more questions, Carmen, do you have a question, or do you want to just unmute and ask? Oh, never mind. She just said bomb makers might have a missing fingertip or two. That'd be a good clue. Or burn scars around the wrists or something like that. Yeah, could be some interesting things you could look for. Joe Toole has a question. Go ahead, Joe Toole. Oh, it's above? Where is it? What's a good tip? Thank you. What's a good tip for finding the most ironic journey for a character outside of making the most difficult journey for that character, if that even is a thing? So yeah, most difficult is a good starting point a lot of the time, because you just have to look at it. It's easy to figure out based on what skills the characters have. What skills do they not have? And we're not just talking about can they fight with a sword or can they hack a computer. We're talking about skills like emotional sort of skills, emotional tools. So look where their deficiencies and look where their flaws are, and consider designing a journey for them around overcoming those flaws. And the best way you can do that is just look for areas where they're strong and threaten them with something that is out of their wheelhouse. Or put them in a scenario or situation where they're forced to re-examine a previously held belief of theirs. Something like that. I mean, if you have a movie about the CEO of a company who gets demoted down to the mailroom, that is going to have a really clear ironic journey to it, because this guy who thought he was in charge of everyone, he's just one snap of the finger and stroke of the pen away from being in the mailroom again. And now, in order to get back up to where he used to be, he's going to have to, we can imagine, if he was a bad boss before, now all of his former underlings are going to be bad to him in the same way that he was. He's going to have his own medicine, fed back to him, and he's going to have to come to realize why he was a bad boss, because these people are now going to treat him in that way. So that sense of irony, we're looking for some value that the character had, that they're going to have to learn that the opposite of that value is true, or if they start out with some negative value or some negative, some flaw, we would say, flaw being something that is to be overcome, then look for what would be a fun way that fits in my genre of them having to realize the truth of that. Atlas Cal says, like horrible bosses. Sure, that would be a good example of this sort of stuff. Carmen says, I'm struggling with the irony thing with my next feature, Rattlesnake Canyon. I'm struggling on pacing with Yellow River, but nothing that can't be worked out. Okay. Well, yeah, definitely come to Lab if you want more guidance on those specific projects one-on-one. For those that don't know, on paid members, if you are an unlimited member or above, can get access to Lab. That's on Saturdays from 4 to 6 o'clock and Pacific time. All times are in Pacific time. And that's when you can come in with whatever questions you have, whatever topics you want to hear more about, and whatever documents you have up to 5 pages that you want to get more feedback on. If there's no more questions, let's do another premise. Did you guys, if we liked Tango Down, here, hang on, let me find where we are. Here we are. So we did a rom-com, so I want to do a different genre this time. Should we do the title game that I did last time? I really do enjoy doing that. Where we come up with a bunch of titles from movies with genres attached to them. Just don't do rom-coms this time. So don't do romance and don't do comedy and don't do rom-com. Pick anything else. Let's come up with a bunch of made-up titles on the spot. So don't think too hard. Just start writing stuff down and put it into the chat, and we will come up with a scattering of terrible titles that way. It's fine if they're terrible. Pink Boy in Paradise as a crime drama. See, I'm just making stuff up. Don't think. Let's do one called Beetle as a Father. Beetle as a Father. What? Horror. Okay. Simple skeleton drama. See what I'm doing? So I'm not going to use these. I want you guys to just give us a bunch of these. Don't think. Just write stuff. Just write titles down, and we'll come up with a bunch of funny examples to look at. Okay, let's see. I'm going to make the chat really big. Hell Mattress. Ooh, there's a high concept horror film. Love Him Never. I think it's Bungee Jumping Banshees. Wow. That sounds like something Robin would say in Batman. Bungee Jumping Banshees, Batman. The Riddler's at it again. The lamp on the table. I like how simple that is. Sometimes the really simple ones end up being more evocative than you think, because they leave so much to the imagination. They invite the question, why is there a movie with this title? Why would something be called that? A book he'll never read. Great. Carmen's on a roll. Another book won the Orange Book. The Cellar. We've done The Cellar. The Cellar was the name of the spec that sold and became 10 Cloverfield Lane. A bruise in his eye. Oh, that's fun. Can a bruise be in someone's eye? I guess it probably can. The Winged Shoes. Cool. Kingdom of Earth. Action fantasy. Yeah, include genres with these if you want, or else we're going to have to make up the genre too. Salad Death. Thank you, Lazima. The crooked finger. Ooh, I like that. Okay. So, thanks for all of these. I'm going to, you can keep going with these if you want to, but I'm going to have to just scroll up and pick one that we've done so far. I'm just going to scroll and see which ones I like and use that to decide what we're going to outline in our last half hour of class. I'll also make sure to take questions before the end. Don't worry. So, if I can remind everyone while you're writing this, short film camp is coming up. You should sign up if you want to write a short film between 1 and 10 pages in just 4 weeks. That free class, first class, August 13th. So make sure to sign up. Somebody on YouTube says my voice is very low and hard to hear. Well, I'll turn up my volume and see if that works. I hope it's not too loud, but we will. I'll try that. Let me know if that improves it. Okay, I'm going to scroll this list of titles and pick one to do. Thank you for all these. These are great. Let's go back to our new page, and I'm going to make a new sheet for, remember, hook, character, journey, and maybe some kind of icing. The title often makes great icing. We want to pick titles very carefully. But right now, I'm just picking random crap. All right, let's just scroll the list. I'm just going to read a bunch out. The Smart Side of the Loon, dark comedy. That's kind of cool. The Misadventures of a Condom. Death by Love. Beautiful Fantasies. Stand by Your Man. Love is Pain. The Appleseed Assassin. Fireboy. Sinister Lover. He May Kill Again. Like a Ferret. Attack of the Soda Cans. I wonder what that could be if not for just a movie about killer soda cans. Hell Mattress. The Eagle Has Risen. Looks like... What is that? We're lucky today. Our team gives you a promo code. I think we're getting spam. You have to fight off the trolls and the spammers. The Crooked Finger. I like that one a lot. Might be going with that. The Lost Book of Ned Flanders from Amanda. That might be a copyright infringement somewhere. Okay, so we're going to go with The Crooked Finger unless I see another great one. Road to Nowhere. Henceforth. A Rusty Nail. Spirit of Shinjuku. Proxy. Ones in Between. Let's go with The Crooked Finger. Okay. The Crooked Finger. Alright, what genre is The Crooked Finger going to be? This sounds kind of horror thrillerish to me. What do you guys think? We're going to do Whose Line style rules. So just shout stuff out. Points don't matter. We can't do rom-com. That's what we just did. That's the one rule. The one rule. Okay, horror. Any other ideas besides horror? Mystery, thriller. Yeah, this does sound sort of Raymond Chandler-ish, doesn't it? The Crooked Finger sounds a little bit like, The Lady in the Lake, or the all of that sort of series of Dashiell Hammett mysteries. Horror or mystery? Food. Is food a genre? Let's go with a law drama. That's interesting. A food mystery that's finger looking good. You just sound like you're writing a commercial now. You should just do Burger King commercials. Okay, so let's go with a mystery. Let's do maybe it could be a spooky mystery. So The Crooked Finger. So to me, with mysteries, a lot of the time that the title is going to be suggesting what the kind of catalyst or clue or some part of the mystery that is on its face the unresolvable part. It might be called something like The Locked Room, in which case it's like, okay, how did somebody get killed in a locked room? That sort of thing. So somebody, Raka says supernatural. It might be supernatural. It doesn't have to be. Frightful Fest says, man has his fingers possessed and he writes down a crime involving supernatural events as it happens. That sounds kind of like 2 different premises, or maybe even 3. And also look into the movie Idle Hands if you want to see a great movie about hand being possessed. So what we have so far is The Crooked Finger. We're sort of asking what this makes me. We're asking what is the Crooked Finger and how does it play into the story? How is this the sort of clue that leads us to the mystery, or it's like all that's left of the victim, or it's the killer is someone with a crooked finger or something like that. I want to just lean a little bit away from supernatural if you can, but it's okay if you come up with something great that is supernatural. All right, so throw out your ideas. I want to see some ideas for what is the premise of The Crooked Finger. Think in terms of what is it a clue for? How is this a key to a mystery? maybe think along the lines of, it's all that's left of the victim. Or the suspect, or the killer, or let's say the victim was shot, and the only suspect has messed up hands and couldn't have fired a gun. So how could the guy with the crooked finger be the killer? Here's some ideas from the chat. It's the name of a group of mountains. That is an idea, Lizima. So yeah, you can always use this to sort of suggest something that it's like the crooked finger could be the name of a ship, or it could be the name of a special mission, or it could be the name of a landscape or like an area of the world. So you can use this for lots of stuff. A metaphor for pointing the finger to someone else, says Rocco Bovo. Yeah, that could be sort of the noir crime drama version of this. Like, you're pointing the crooked finger at the wrong guy. That sort of thing, where somebody's been falsely accused of a crime. I could maybe see that. Carmen says, the man has a car without an operable handle on the right side. Okay, that sounds more like a sort of a detail. Maybe that's a detail in a case, or like part of a clue or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it's a clue to yet. Maybe all that's found is a finger, says Trashy. That could be. In which case, maybe we're dealing with some kind of supernatural thing that explodes people, or a monster that eats everything except for people's fingers. Joe Toole says, I like it being the only thing left of a body. They discover at the end it's actually the killer. I'm not sure how that would work. Okay. Yeah, it could be all number of things. We're going to have to, at a certain point, just pick a lane. I'm going to look at what has been suggested so far and try to draw from the things that you guys are saying, but I'm going to have to sort of modify them as we go. Ultimately, this is not a writer's room. It is a class, so I'm going to have to just stampede through it and write something at some point. But great ideas so far. Feel free to please keep writing stuff. Okay, so you know what? I'll just drop this and mention this because I think this is an interesting detail. From all my research into Leningrad and siege situations in wartime, especially in winter, sometimes there will be corpses that freeze solid and will be afflicted with, they're like an icicle. They're like icy rigor mortis, essentially. And in Leningrad, there was a cemetery where there was a corpse that was pinned up in place on the gate and with one hand extended pointing towards the graveyard to sort of to use it essentially as a road sign. So it sort of makes me think of a corpse that's frozen in the ground where the hand is poking from the earth or hand is poking from the snow with nothing more than a crooked finger pointing at something. I like the idea of a corpse or a person that died that in their last moments wanted to show something to us or show us where something's buried or indicate something to us, that would just sort of be the question. What were they trying to point at? That could be the hook of the story. Amanda says it's nursery rhyme. There was a crooked man. Well, we did this. This was called The Conjuring 2. The Crooked Man also was going to have a spin-off movie that I don't think ended up happening. They already used that really heavily in another big movie, so I don't know if we can lean on the same nursery rhyme. But you would see how that would apply for sure. His interest in Conjuring 2 is actually probably the highlight of that movie. Okay, it crawls in the mouths of people sleeping, says Frightful Fest. Wow, that is quite a take. If the finger is alive still and it's crawling around like a little monster, God, what if it crawled into somebody's... You said it crawls into people's mouths. What if it could go inside you and possess you, maybe, or could burrow through somebody's body? These are very sort of Evil Dead style approaches to this. The frozen finger pointing to something, yeah, that could be a fun... I think that's just where my mind went right away. We don't have to stick with that. How about a puppet master? Oh, finger puppets. Oh, maybe finger puppets. I'm gonna write that down. Finger puppet theme for this mystery, perhaps. Maybe there's something there. Okay, I'm gonna start to just put a couple things together just so we have something to work from that you guys can work with and continue to... I'll be shaping it as we go. So, finger that crawls inside you is terrifying. Don't want to imagine that, says Rocco. You know what? I kind of like it. I kind of like the fingers alive. It does kind of... I like it just because I don't want to use the thing I thought of. If it was my movie, I'd be like, let's start with the frozen hand thing. But we don't have to. I want to pick something weirder that you guys chose. So let's do the finger is alive because that's freaking out Rocco so much. Okay, so if we say that a finger is all, and we can use that to combine what some other people mentioned too. So if the finger is all that's left of a murder scene, This is basically let's turn this into straight horror. Finger is all that's left of a murder scene. Who's somebody who would have a particular... Oh, this could be a horror comedy, I guess. But who's somebody whose whole job revolves around their fingers? Oh, wait, a finger puppet guy is actually good for that. Oh, this is kind of... makes it its own sort of perfect sense, doesn't it? I think we're getting there. So, if the victim is a finger puppet master... What do you call them? Finger puppeteer. Then... And if he is killed in such a way that leaves only his finger left, that finger crawls around and crawls into people to control them. It makes sense, just like the puppets, right? A puppet master would, of course, be someone who would be possessing people from beyond the grave. So that's actually great. Let's use that. So it's all that's left of a dead puppeteer, finger puppeteer. When recovered for evidence... Did they bring body parts in for evidence? Where would they take it? I don't quite know. Does anyone know? Then it comes to life and, wreaks havoc. I think that's the basis of the movie. It's a bit like Idle Hands, but maybe we want to do it in sort of a police evidence kind of locker, or like maybe we want to set it in a police station, because that's where where would you take evidence like this? A morgue? I guess the morgue, right? It'd have to be the morgue. If anyone knows, let me know. Yeah, I guess let's start at the morgue, and we'll say that the finger is now going on a... Maybe if it was an accidental death, we can now get behind the idea. This is the sort of thing where, a careless group of people burned down the puppet theater, and the guy burned to death, and all that's left was the finger. Carmen says law enforcement would place in the evidence room in a bag. Oh, do they have freezers in the evidence room? I guess they probably do. They probably do. Okay, so yeah, if that's the only evidence left of him, they'd definitely keep it because it would have a fingerprint on it if it was, still intact enough to be recovered. If it wasn't burned too badly, you could use it. Okay, so let's use that. Let's just do this for now. The crooked finger is going to be horror. So the hook is evil finger creeping around possessing people. Or let's say evil puppet master. Evil puppeteer. Possessing people through his severed finger. I like that. I think this works. So we're going to need a main character who is going to be the one to take on this evil puppeteer. So using the tools I've given you today, describe for me who is the kind of person that we would want to see going on this, tackling this villain and going on this journey. I'm not going to give you the answer right away. I want to see your guys' brains working in this high concept space where we're using the same principles we used last time to pick the right character to face this foe. Amanda says someone who's suppressed his childhood. Maybe. It could be. I mean, that might be a side effect of some trait that we're choosing for him. I could see that. Atlas says someone doing magic tricks using their fingers. Well, I'm not sure why we would want the main character to be doing magic tricks necessarily. We're picking the hero to be going up against an evil puppeteer. So think, by defeating a puppeteer, what value could you be sort of learning, or what could you be sort of doing for that character's journey by defeating a puppeteer? Trashy asks, how does it possess people? Right now we think it crawls into their mouths and it goes inside them. Amanda says he's detached from his childhood, but to solve the mystery, he has to engage with the creative game, playing, or make-believe part of his mind. Okay, so maybe if he has to engage, if he has to buy into or engage with the supernatural or engage with the sort of make-believe, maybe that could work for a main character's journey. It's not the most obvious thing, and the most obvious thing in a high-concept story is often a thing you should try to find a way to make it work, though. So I'm still looking for one specific thing. It's okay if we don't get there, but any other ideas? Amanda says, I'm thinking about the Puppet Master is make-believe. The Puppet Master is make-believe. Well, puppetry is sort of make-believe, so that I could sort of see the arc that you're suggesting there. Any other ideas? Rocco says John Turturro has a weird foot disease in the night of, something relating to feet or hands. Yeah, isn't it eczema on his foot that he has to scratch with a stick? Rocco says a doll maker might be our main character, Geppetto. Okay, so why would that be something that somebody who needs to defeat a puppeteer if he's a guy who makes puppets? Maybe you're saying if it was one of his puppeteers that has turned bad or gone down the dark path, maybe that could be it, or maybe, so when we're picking our hero and villain, most of the time we want them to start in the same place or in opposite places. And then we will be highlighting that sort of what in their conflict actually highlights elements of their ideology or worldview that are then coming to clash and be tested in this crucible of the story. So maybe he had a traumatic experience with puppets as a child. That's a good suggestion. The finger is trying to create a new body to pull the puppeteer's soul back into the living. Him wanting a body back is probably a nice way to take it. A puppet who wants revenge turns people into his puppets. A new body. I love the movie Unbreakable. Okay, well, so you're talking Unbreakable in terms of the hero and villain being chosen specifically for their relation to each other. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're always trying to do in high concept ideas. So let me just throw out the thing I was thinking, and then I'll pick one of the ideas that you chose. But I'm thinking in a high concept story about defeating a puppet master, your main character should be someone who feels he has no control in his life. He feels like he is being puppeted or like being forced to do everything. He needs to snip the strings, so to speak, in order to be free, to become whole. That's the idea that is just, to me, springs to mind right away. If we're fighting a guy who controls puppets, then your main character needs to be somebody who needs to metaphorically defeat the person who's holding the strings. You don't have to use exactly that, but that's just like the direction I want you to be thinking of when you are designing the basics of a premise's working pieces and the mechanics of how a story's going to work. Okay, I'm going to pick something from the chat there that you guys have said so far. I like the finger trying to create a new body, somebody who has a traumatic experience with puppets in his childhood. I do like that as well. We might ask why he had a traumatic experience as puppets as a result of some flaw of his that needs to sort of be overcome, perhaps. Maybe just it is that sort of difficulty engaging with the make-believe. Might be something good we might want to use, so let's just use that for now. Somebody who, that will make it challenging for him to participate in the story to some extent, because if you have a skeptic as the lead character in a blatantly supernatural story, they're pretty soon going to have their skepticism disproven, so it's like you better have some other thing to define them by. We can't define them by something that's going to be mitigated or entirely rendered moot by the catalyst. So let's say our character is going to be... do we want him to be another puppeteer, or do we want him to be someone who hates puppets and was traumatized by them as a child? Maybe let's do that. So let's say... I think we might want to say that the main character might be sort of complicit in what happened to the puppeteer. So, who would have been responsible for a big fire that consumed the puppet shop and burned him almost all to death? Octoboy says, who's the villain exactly? He's an evil puppeteer that was sort of Freddy Kruegered in such a way that only his finger was remaining from his corpse. Joe Toole says, owner of the finger was over-controlled as a kid, always pulling other people's strings, and never felt whole. Somebody over-controlled. Okay, maybe a main character could be like a prisoner, right? Or somebody who else has their life control office drone. Who else? Somebody like a soccer mom who sort of felt like forced to be a mom and never wanted to be one. So when I say like reluctant parent. Somebody says a cook. Is a cook someone who, by definition, feels that they have no control or is being puppeted around everywhere? Maybe. Octoboy says a giant finger is the big bad. No, it's a severed finger that's left. It's not giant. It's all that remained from our villain, the puppeteer, and now it's creeping around, going into people's mouths and possessing them and turning them, he can possess them that way and fulfill his revenge scheme. Atlas says, someone who has petophobia, so early childhood best friend tried to destroy his puppets and almost lost his hand in the fire. These are nice, but these are all things that happen at their childhood, so we have to think of who are they now, right? If our main character is an adult... Well, actually, our main character could also be a kid. Think Child's Play. That might be the way to go with it as well. So, but in that case, we can't say they had a traumatic childhood experience that is informing who they are. In that case, if it's recent enough, it's not a traumatic childhood experience. It's just a traumatic experience. So... all that remains is the finger. You're out of control, Rocco. Alright, so I'm just going to pick something. Let's go with kid. So our character is going to be let's make him a straight A student. And teacher's pet. The kind of student who their parents sign them up for every after-school activity and they have no control of their life. Let's make it a girl. So let's say 12-year-old teacher's pet. Girl that... and her journey is going to be gaining control of her life through sort of defeating this evil finger, this evil puppeteer. So we have the characters. We have the character. We have the general arc of the journey. We don't quite have the icing because this is not a super high concept idea, but it's getting there. I mean, with a little reworking, we can make this really, really click into place. For now, just because we have 10 minutes left, I'm just going to come up with the basic scenes of the plot. So let's, again, remember our structure and just learn this so well that you don't even have to think about writing down the different steps of it and just know it like the back of your hand. So we have intro, we have catalyst, we have trying the locks, break into two, funding or premise, scenes, midpoint, escalation, all is lost, dark night of the soul or pit of despair, break into three, finale, and epilogue. Every time, same thing, and you should know the general page benchmarks that these things are going to be expected to fall upon for your genre that you're doing. So let's write out just a couple of the things, because we have the essentials. We have the hook, character, and journey, so we know what we need to do. So we have our main character, 12-year-old teacher's pet girl, so that's what we're establishing in our intro sequence. But since this is horror, and we know that with horror, the first scene should be a scary scene, we probably want to have our opening scene be careless. Let's make it students who do it. Careless students burned down. Maybe he was like an art teacher and a puppeteer, so he was at their school. Careless students burned down the school somehow, killing art teacher because he runs in to save his puppets. Okay. All that remains is the finger. Let's make our main character be the one that finds it, though. So our main character is, well, actually, we probably want to have her in this opening sequence. So we may want to actually... I'm wondering if we should start with a scare scene or if we should start... Yeah, let's not have our very first scene be a scare scene, but let's make this a horror comedy, first of all. I think we should probably do. And then let's have our main character, teacher's pet, at the science fair, accidentally triggers a fire because she does exactly what she's told, right? So this is going to be like the teacher, she has some big electronic wiring project or something, and the teacher's like, and she's like, well, I think that though we should, maybe she asks permission to bring in her own wiring or something, or she's like, this is going to create a severe fire hazard. Are you sure that, can I have a technician on standby? She makes some request to the teachers, and the teachers are just like, no, it's fine. It's not a fire hazard. And instead of speaking up, she steps back, and we sort of see her flaw. She's like, okay, I guess I just do what I'm told. So instead of fixing the obvious fire hazard, maybe it's not her project. Maybe she notices someone else's electronic, I don't know, RC car has a fire hazard in the wiring, and the teachers tell her to be quiet, so she does. And therefore, the school burns down, kills our art teacher guy, and as he goes in to save his puppets. So let's have our opening image be panning across creepy finger puppets. Actually, let's make it a finger puppet show. The art teacher is in his classroom by himself, playing with finger puppets, or putting on a show. During the science fair. He's too weird to be a chaperone, so he's amusing himself with his puppets. We then go into we meet our main character and see our sort of story kick into motion with something here in the intro, which is going to be she doesn't speak up, and therefore a science project catches on fire and kills this guy. Our catalyst is going to be the cops bag his finger and bring it in for evidence. So I like this. In this case, I want to make her dad one of the cops as well. Let's make her dad, let's say local sheriff. Only recovers the finger and brings it in the station. Okay. So, let's see. What do we have in the chat? Amanda says, why isn't the fire burning the place down the catalyst? It could be in a different version of the story. It could be, but this is I'm constructing this so that the catalyst is the finger comes to life. It's not the guy dies. Because in a horror story, you typically want to start with some scary stuff and setting up the villain up top. So I'm choosing to do that rather than having 10 minutes of build up and then getting to here's how the villain is created. I'm doing this because we want to get to the scares quicker. Atlas says, why can't the puppet master lose the finger in a mini guillotine while doing a puppet show? Because no intelligent puppet master would have a real guillotine on stage that he would really put his finger in and endanger himself. And regardless, we want to make it partially the main character's fault that this has happened so that the villain feels like he has more of some kind of point that he's, even a ghost that is getting revenge should have a valid reason for wanting to get revenge, if that's going to be their motivation usually. Okay, so we have a couple scenes in the intro. We have the catalyst. We know what the premise scenes are going to be. The finger possesses. Let's make the first victim her dad. And then our main character is going to have to, she realizes, or she sees dad acting weird, grows to suspect something is wrong. She's about to report it when he attacks her. And maybe we could say the finger starts hopping between hosts in an effort to find and kill the kids responsible for, somewhat, I'll put responsible in quotes, for the puppeteer's death. So our main character is racing from victim to try to save them and coordinate them to defeat the villain. Joe Toole suggests we could have the hero and antagonist switch. The teachers are controlling her, so she decides to do good and dies for it and gets revenge on the teachers. So that is also a valid way to take that. You could definitely outline that. If you want to, that sounds like a different take. If you're swapping the hero and villain, it's a pretty big change. But feel free to outline that on your own, or write this. I don't care. Anybody can write Crooked Finger if they want to. So let's just, in our last couple minutes, let's put a few more points down. We know that the pit of despair, the all is lost is going to be that the finger seems like it's one. We probably want to have a sequence also in the escalation where main girl gets possessed by a finger for a time, and she has to find a way to get it out of her as she's possessed by the villain. We want to play all the games possible with the thing that we're doing. So let's make sure that in our premise scenes we're losing characters too. So let's say dad dies, best friend killed by finger. We have just like our major death scenes outlined in the premise scenes before we get into it. Let's say favorite teacher, so like all the central relationships, we lose most of them in a lot of violent horror stories. Amanda asks, what's the difference between All is Lost and Pit of Despair? Well, that's a good question. All is Lost represents a moment where your character has either failed at their goal or seems as they are on the verge of failing at their goal. So that's often the worst thing that they can possibly think of because they think that that's the most important thing. And then Pit of Despair is going to showcase how bad things can really get. It's going to be them hitting their low point and then getting even lower as they are like continually kicked on the ground. Or maybe now that not only have they lost the contest or they've quit the contest, they've broken up with their girlfriend that was in the contest with them too, and now they're even more miserable than they possibly thought they could be because now they have to go home and clean out all her stuff. And like we want to see the consequences of the all is lost moment and watch those characters really wallow in defeat. The stronger that is, the stronger it will be when they swing out of that moment into the break into 3, and as they move triumphantly towards the action of the climax. Does that answer that question? Okay, great. So yeah, we have those major points. Let's say finale is going to be main girl versus finger showdown. And then I'm going to leave it there just because we only have 2 minutes left. But we get the gist of this, I'm hoping at least, just from nailing down the basics of what the premise is. In about 15 to 20 minutes, I'm able to come up with what all the major scenes and set pieces are not all of them. A lot of the major kind of linchpin set pieces and sequences of the movie are going to be, because the premise was constructed with the high concept elements in mind and at the absolute forefront so that we know it's going to be this meets this. So there's got to be a scene where this and this collide. There's got to be a final battle between this and this. We know the journey the character's on, so we know the sort of finale we should be building towards and aiming for. I hope that you guys are just getting a good sense of how to build a movie plot and how to break a story. I'm going to open for questions of any kind, based on anything we talked about today or about Script Camp and our programs. What do you guys want to know before we move on? You can ask over text, or feel free to unmute at this point and ask on voice.
Yeah, how often are these meetups?
We have we have weekday classes on Wednesday and Thursday from 5 to 7. And then we have boot camps on weekends, which are taking you from idea to first draft of a brand new script. And those are on an 8-week cycle for the feature. So there's a couple weeks left in this one, then a new one will be starting. Those are on Fridays from 4 to 6 right now. We have TV boot camp on Sundays, and we have sci-fi boot camp going on Saturdays right now. So we have a bunch of classes going on at once. Usually the days are going to be Wednesday, Thursday for the weekday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the boot camps.
And the Wednesday and Thursday ones are free, and the other ones are paid programs?
A lot of the Wednesday, Thursday ones are free public classes. Yeah, we sometimes have ones that are just for members. So, but that's if you're just a basic member or above, you get all of them. So that's $5 a month for that. The bootcamp classes are for paid members. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for the question. Looks like Joe Toole says, "Can I ask a quick question after class is over? Private message." Yeah, sure. Just go ahead, or you can email Connor@scriptcamp.net if you have a question you want to ask me on my own for some reason. Atlas says, "Is it possible to have the All Is Lost and Pit of Despair combined?" Not really, because the All Is Lost is what leads to the Pit of Despair sequence. Pit of Despair is a sequence. It's not just one moment. It's several different scenes that are exploring your character at their absolute lowest. And in order to get there, we need a strong All Is Lost that pushes us logically into that. So therefore, I'm going to say those can't really be the same thing, but often they're going to be touching on the same emotional lines, because the All Is Lost is we hit our character really hard where we knock them down, and then the Pit of Despair is going to be we continue to kick them on the ground in that same injured spot. Good question, though. Other questions? So a couple things coming up. Feel free to keep typing your questions if you have any, but a couple things coming up. Short film first class is free. It's August 13th. It's a 4-week boot camp in how to write a script between 1 and 10 pages long. It will, at the halfway mark, we're turning these in. So after our second class meeting, you turn in what you have and you get feedback on it, and then you do a second draft. So this is our first ever class that's going to include 2 total drafts by the end of that 4 weeks. So we are going to look at short film structure and just learn how to write a very polished short form story of any genre between 1 and 10 pages long. So you can join that by going RSVPing at scriptcamp.net/events/short-bootcamp. I'll leave the link in the chat. Hope that works. Let's make sure that works. Yeah, that works. Okay. A couple other things coming up. We have how to analyze a screenplay. That's a free class. That's next week. That's July 27th. That's for both us people who are aspiring to work as story analysts or producers or development executives, or maybe for screenwriters who want to just, get better at understanding what makes scripts work. This is just a 2-day class. It's going to help you use these methods used by professional script readers and story analysts to break down how a script is working, where are all the different pieces. A lot of what we did today, you will learn how to do in much more detail in that class, or what to look for at least. How do you apply structure as a diagnostic tool to ascertain what is working in a script and where the deficiencies are? So that might help you learn how to be a script reader or just critique your own scripts efficiently. That's July 27th and 28th. You can RSVP for that one too if you want. The link is also going to go in the chat right here. One more thing, we have a interview coming up, interview session with Logan Martin, who is a Blacklist writer who wrote the horror script called Meat back in 2016 or 2017, which was really a very big script in town. So you can hear my interview with him and ask your own questions. You should bring questions to this. The price of admission for these interview classes, they're free to go to, but the price is you have to come with a question. So I don't want to have our guest come and then we're like, all right, go for it. Let us have it with the questions, and then just stony silence. So Now the new policy for this is you must come with a question. But it's a great opportunity. It doesn't have to be like a super difficult question. It should be just something you think about a little bit. That's on August 3rd, and that's going to be, again, with Logan Martin, and you can RSVP for that if you want to. But that's part of our upcoming series called How I Wrote This. And that's going to be where I'm interviewing all kinds of other screenwriters and creatives in Hollywood for stories on how they came up with their movie, how they, like challenges they ran into when writing it, specific stuff to look for. So you should probably read Meet before that class as well. You can find it in the blacklist, I believe. If not, then we'll have a link for it pretty soon. Okay, so any last questions, comments, or thoughts before we close class for today? Carmen asks, how do you find out how many script coins you have? I think you type in store like that, or maybe it's with a $. Yeah, type in $store, I believe, in any chat channel. I could have that wrong, so maybe that's just the one that displays all the different options. Let me send you a message right after class is done, Carmen. I'll confirm for you how that works. I obviously don't use the system much myself because I run the camp, but we'll send you a message in a minute. Other questions, comments, or thoughts based on today's class? All right, if there's no more, we're going to wrap class here for today. Thank you for joining us. Script Camp has lots of classes you can come to soon. Let me just leave our last thing as a list of upcoming sessions. So that interview with Logan Martin is on August 3rd. We have Feature Bootcamp Friday at 4. Sci-Fi Bootcamp Saturday at 12. There's 2 more of those meetings. Writers Lab Saturday every Saturday 4 to 6. And we have a couple of groups and other things that you can look at here, but the basics of our program are the boot camps. That TV Pilot Bootcamp is Sunday at 11. That's all the camps we have going on right now, and everything else. If you want to join a group or start a group, you can have lots of tools to do that here. Script Camp is just sort of a one-stop shop for places, or, a place to meet other people who are trying to learn how to write movies and TV. And you can swap with them, you can get feedback from them, you can trade with them, and get to build a sort of community and peer group around that. So highly recommend you check out everything we have here if you're new. And if you haven't signed up yet, please sign up, scriptcamp.net/membership. All right, thanks so much, guys. I'm going to call class there for today, and we'll see you at your next event. Have a great rest of your night.